there, this is April Hutchins, also known as Anna Pest, and you're listening to the Progcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Progcast. This is episode 102. And if you remember last week, or actually on Monday, I talked to Ravaya from Need. And in my recommendations for the What's in Your Walkman section, I had this song from Feather called M-I-R-O-R-S, Mirrors. And actually, I didn't know what that acronym stands for, and Anthony, the guy behind Feather, told me in the meantime, so I want to share it with you. So, yeah, it's called My Inferior Risk of Rain Song. So there you have it, now you know that, and but today, of course, we have also a guest, and you already heard it, it's April, calling from Canada, I guess. And April is probably the guest representing the most extreme output or music so far on the Progcast, and I'm assuming a lot of our Progcast listeners won't be familiar with your project Anna Pest. So why don't you introduce yourself, what you've been up to musically the last years, where you come from musically, so to speak.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Dario. So I guess I started playing music with other people in around 2011. I started off in the band Melivon. We were a local Montreal kind of industrial tinged melodic death metal outfit. We all had different stuff we were listening to, and we were interested in incorporating a lot of different sounds. So a lot of our songs sounded quite different to one another. And there was a bit of a blend of styles there. And it was really like an environment in which I was being exposed to all the different kinds of music my bandmates were listening to on a regular basis. And I guess in that context, I was feeling super inspired and kind of reached a point where I was writing too much music for my other band members to keep up with. And some of the ideas were admittedly a bit beyond any of us in terms of our playing skill level. So eventually I branched off and decided to start up a little solo project, which is Anna Pest. And for the last couple of years, I've been basically slowly putting out this massive collection of songs that I wrote during that time period of inspiration, packaged into different little projects. And each project, I guess I was going, each project had a different sort of sound in the bass line. I'd say they all sound quite different from one another, but they were exactly just collections of stuff that I'd written prior, and this new record is kind of the first thing I've put out on my own that's just fresh ideas. So I'm quite excited about that.
Okay, just having a look at your Spotify profile here, artist profile, obviously, it's kind of starting in 2016 with Transmission, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then there's a couple of singles and EPs. Yeah, up to 2019's The Ocean Calls Me Home. So
Yeah.
those were all those ideas that you kind of packaged into coherent little releases that would have a kind of similar overall sound.
That's right? Exactly it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then after The Ocean Calls Me Home, did you start immediately working on the new album that is out since January 1st, and we didn't even mention it yet? Right? It is called Dark Arms Reach Skyward with Bone White Fingers.
Yeah, that's the one. Funny enough, I actually started writing the material for that record as far back as 2017. But I still had stuff on the back burner at the time that I'd wanted to get out sooner. Plus, I guess it kind of took me a while to finish the last of the songs. I want to say the last piece that I finished writing on the record, I wrote in 2020. So it took a while to shape together. And I was working on other stuff in the meantime.
So yeah, musically, you already said you covered a lot of ground with all these prior releases, and I think if you just like, I think the only other release that is labeled as an album would be Forlorn, also from 2016, and looking at the cover and the song names, it has a quite distinct black metal feel about it. Am I right?
Definitely, yeah.
So which other kind of which genres did you touch and did you incorporate in your writing style?
Right. So for my first release, Transmission, those songs were very much, at the time that I had written them, intended to be Mellivon songs from my old band. So I'd say they all have that kind of industrial tinged, kind of catchy, kind of poppy, melodic death metal feel. For Forlorn, those were all very much black metal songs. You called that out for sure. For my EPs, A Fortress of Flesh, that was a collection of more kind of deathcore, brutal death metal oriented pieces that I'd written. Something As Afoot, I would describe as kind of a mix of deathcore and trancecore. I was very much feeling the kind of trashy 2006 to 2011 post-hardcore, metalcore, trancecore kind of stuff. I was really into that for a while as kind of a guilty pleasure. And that was kind of my way of exploring that sound. And 2019's The Ocean Calls Me Home. Those were actually also songs that I'd intended for Mellivon. But I sort of spruced them up and worked in a bit of my later style I'd been evolving, just to kind of bring them up to date, because some of those songs, the initial ideas for them at the time were like almost 8 or 9 years old. So
all right, and for all these releases you've been doing everything yourself?
Yeah, so I do the vocals, unless otherwise noted. I occasionally have friends and feature spots do like backing vocals or clean vocals, which have never been my strongest suit, admittedly. I do all the guitars, I program all the drums, bass, and keyboards, and handle all the production.
All right, I guess we're gonna talk about some features regarding the new album, obviously. But before that, I think there's a bigger concept about this album. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess kind of the initial moment that spurned the songwriting process for this record into being was in 2017. I watched for the first time the anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion, which has gone on to become probably my favorite show that I've ever seen. It's quite a curious little piece of media. On the surface, it's like this, giant robots battling alien monsters type deal. But what I really appreciate about it is that the way it kind of deals with the trauma of war and of loss and of death. It's kind of the first. I understand there's definitely a rich history of this sort of trope in anime, but this was my first time being acquainted with it so intimately. There's this idea of showing your characters who are doing these incredible feats of valor and bravery and fighting monsters and stuff. That there's this. The show actually shows them falling apart mentally throughout the process and gets into, the fact that that what they're doing is extremely hard and should never be asked of a single person. And a lot of them are kids, you know, they're these robots are being piloted by like 14-year-old kids who already have shit that they're dealing with in their personal lives. And something about that really spoke to me. I guess at the time I kind of felt like a kid myself still. I had just moved out of my parents' house, moved into my first apartment, gotten my first real office job, and was kind of just feeling disillusioned with how empty the whole affair kind of felt. And in that context, the show really spoke to me. So after I finished watching it, the visuals, the characters, the dialogue was all kind of spinning around in my head, and I had just tons of lyrical ideas. And I want to say I wrote the lyrics for almost the entire record in the span of about 2 months, and just spent the rest of that time building these musical arrangements to accompany the lyrics. And that was kind of how the music came into form.
We want to talk about the music, of course, but I just want to say that I'm not really familiar with anime at all. But of course, Neon Genesis Evangelion is a title that is, well, I would say, coming from an outside perspective, never having watched anything really anime, I think that's something that is known beyond the anime fandom.
Absolutely.
As one of the standout genre classics. And as you described it just now with this the characters and how the show deals with these subject matters, it sounded quite intriguing, I must say. And I was never really into this, you know, into the style, and also like the animation style, which is pretty distinct and pretty unique. And that was probably what put me off, or what didn't make me go and check it out. But hearing like these, hearing that there's so much more to it, in terms of writing, and in terms of the story, it really sounds like something I could dig.
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, I came into it from an outside perspective as well. I want to say it was maybe the second or third anime I actually watched the whole way through. I just kind of got into it more recently. I'd seen 1 or 2 series that I thought were kind of cool. One of them was Death Note, which I'm sure you've also heard of. And I started reaching out to my friends for possible recommendations. This was the first one that came up, and this was the first one that made me enthusiastic about pursuing and exploring anime. So I would absolutely recommend it to anyone really who appreciates, you know, war dramas, psychological dramas, as well as, you know, giant robots beating the fuck out of celestial entities.
All right. Let's have a look at the music, because Dark Arms Reach Skyward with Bone White Fingers is, I mean, it's 44 minutes, so it's quite it's an average length, I would say, for more prog or more mainstream metal albums. Of course, you're also coming from, you also have some influences from the hardcore, grindcore, whatever scene that is used to shorter songs and shorter albums. 15 songs is definitely, first, it looks like pretty massive. Like, I'm used to 6, 7, 8 songs usually per album, and I think there's a lot of shorter songs on the album, but also one longer song, and I think it's pretty diverse stylistically. So, where did you get your influences from, and how did you piece them together?
Right. So I guess musically speaking, the band that I discovered that sort of got me to start thinking about how I wanted to put these songs together was Discordance Axis, and I stumbled across them because they were also inspired in writing the lyrics for one of their records, very much by Evangelion, and they're very technical, kind of spiraling, but also quite harmonically rich and gorgeous. I would say a grindcore band. And they were my first kind of exposure into that realm. I had never really earnestly explored grind before that, but I would now consider myself to be quite a fan. So definitely there was them. Other projects by their lead singer, John Chang, such as Gridlink, which is a really great grindcore band with kind of a progressive bent. I was super into them too. I was also into a lot of technical death metal. I've always been a fan of Fallujah's The Harvest Wombs. I sort of fell in love with that record back around the time it came out, and it started coming up more and more in my rotation again as I was writing these songs. And I guess that's where some of the more technical, dizzying, progressive influence is coming in, is from that side of things. I'm trying to think. I had like a huge list of bands that that I was feeling influenced by when I put this thing out. Definitely Ingested is another one. I fell in love with them about a year ago, and you might notice, some chunky bass heavy riffing on the record. That definitely came from me listening to them a lot. A bit of Wormed too. I fell in love with Wormed about a year and a half ago. I really like their kind of mixture of brutal and technical riffs and some of that squawking mathcore action as well. Those are kind of the first few names that come to mind.
And I seem to remember that not too long ago you also released a cover version of a song from Sludge.
Yes. It was my fellow collaborator on that, Colin, who recommended that we do that song. Definitely Sludge are a great progressive death metal band, and I've enjoyed quite a few of their records.
Yeah, they also due a new album this year, I think.
Are they? Awesome.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting because I really enjoyed the last one, and back when I explored that, I might be 2 years ago now or something, or 2 or 3 years ago. That was when I was pretty new to these levels of extremity,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now it's gonna be interesting for me how I absorb new material from them, being a little bit more comfortable and a little more knowledgeable and a little bit more used to this level of brutality.
Yeah, it's cool because they are kind of a great band to bring you along on that journey. They've got that instrumentally, of course, they're quite heavy, and aesthetically, death metal is all over the place. But I want to say and from a songwriting perspective, all their songs are progressive metal songs.
Yeah.
And even that song we covered, the chapter for transforming into a slug, looking at that song structurally, it's basically a pop song. You've got like 3 or 4 riffs. You got a verse, chorus, breakdown, chorus. That's basically your pop core standard right there. But it's an incredibly heavy and fun song.
So yeah, you mentioned a lot of influences, and but there's also a few guest appearances on the album, and I think I saw that about one of them you posted that he's one of your favorite death metal shouters or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
yeah.
so who can we hear on the album apart from yourself?
Yeah. So there's probably my favorite death metal vocalist, at least of the moment, Jason Evans from Ingested, one of the bands who inspired me a lot as I was writing the music for this thing. He started up an account on Featured X, which is a wonderful little website where people who are interested can commission people from some of their favorite bands to do guest features. I had seen them in January of this year, just before things started getting locked down, which was definitely a riveting experience. And then I see him pop up on Featured X, and I'm like, man, I'd be crazy not to ask this guy. So I reached out to him through there. He's on the record. He's on track 2, and he absolutely killed it. Really, really took it to the next level. There's also Duncan Bentley from Vulvodynia, another really fantastic death metal vocalist, one of my favorites. He's from he's from the South African band Vulvodynia, and also the kind of wacky death metal project Zablag. And he really destroyed.
I actually have seen Vulvodynia live, supporting a couple of other more technical death metal bands. I think it was. Wait a second. If I can piece it together, it was a Canadian band. Continue, and I will get back to you later which band I saw.
Oh yeah, sure thing. It was track 13, Love is Destructive, that Duncan is on. I'd also say he basically made that song. And then we've got some vocals from my friend Dario, who's based in New York. She's kind of an experimental electronic artist, really interesting production on all her songs, and she's got a really incredible voice. We've been online friends for a couple of years now. I did a feature on one of her tracks earlier last year, sorry. And she sang on this song in an exchange. And her chorus is one of my favorite parts on the record, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it. I'm pretty sure it must have been Vulvodynia supporting Despised Icon.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Canadian deathcore staple right there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And my connection with this Despised Icon is solely through the guitar player Eric Jorin, which who I got to know with Heaven's Cry, his other prog metal band. And I saw Heaven's Cry play twice at Prog Power Europe, and I'm a huge Heaven's Cry fan. So when I saw that he's gonna be in Munich with his other band, I said, "Hey, let's meet up." And so that's how I got to see those bands I usually wouldn't go to see.
Right, awesome. That sounds like a great show, though. I'm shy to admit this, but I actually did not realize he was in Heaven's Cry as well.
Yeah. I think he was. I mean, they had a long period where they were kind of on a hiatus. But when they came back, he also came back, and I think he was out of the band for a while or something. But yeah, especially the first 2 albums are so unique.
Awesome.
So yeah, that was cool. To see this kind of also slam death and deathcore style, which I wouldn't go to usually to concerts like this from these kinds of bands, but it's great to see what they're doing. And it was a crazy night. They absolutely killed it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, definitely great live energy there.
Yeah, I think the third band, or maybe it was 4 bands, but I think the co-headliner before Despised Icon, they were called Malevolence, maybe.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, that was my foray into slam death and deathcore territory on the live front.
Awesome.
um, Yeah, we're actually already reaching the end of our interview. But as you might have heard at the beginning, I was mentioning something that is called "What's in Your Walkman," and that's our little section at the end where I ask my guests what they've been listening to lately. So I want to ask you, what have you been listening to lately? Is there anything you want to recommend to our fans?
Hey, sure, awesome. So I've been checking out a lot of new stuff that came out just sort of around New Year's. I'm a member of the Rate Your Music community, and funnily enough, Dark Arms is currently sitting as number 5 album of 2021.
Wow.
And a lot of people ended up listening to it just by virtue of it coming out on the first and showing up at the top of the charts. And I've been checking out the other stuff, and there's a lot of really cool, wacky electronic music that came out at the start of the year that I've been checking out. I don't know if that would fit your listener base especially, but
I always say we're not the gatekeepers of prog here, and I also always love to feature stuff that is not prog in the playlist that is accompanying our Progcast, because I mean we had people recommend Dua Lipa or that kind of stuff. So I'm fine with anything actually, because I think that's also a cool way to broaden our musical horizons, right?
hey, awesome. All right. Well, in that case, I will definitely shout out my favorite of the year so far, which is Amidst Radiances by the Bread Scientists. It's a really clever, kind of deft mixture of a lot of different styles of electronic music, to the point that it would be kind of pedantic for me to list them all. I'd say it's maybe a little glitch hoppy in the foreground, but there's a lot of rich melody in there too, a lot of great production, really fun kind of explorative and short little release that I would definitely recommend for anyone even curious about electronic music. In terms of other stuff, I've been on a bit of a screamo slash crust punk binge lately.
Okay.
I really got into, I should have mentioned them earlier. I was really into Alpinist, who are a German band, now defunct, unfortunately, who put out some really great crust records in the early 2010s slash late 2000s. I got back into them recently and ended up stumbling across The Devil Shining Out Your Eyes from Islet. That's a great screamo record from 2020. Also very much enjoying Part Ache by Jungbluth. They're half the members were originally from Alpinist, that earlier band that I mentioned. They're super awesome. I also just kind of fell in love with Alexisonfire's debut album, which is a ton of fun if you're into that post-hardcore type stuff.
That's finally a name I know, or I've heard about.
Yeah. And definitely gonna recommend I Let It In and It Took Everything from Loathe. That's a great record that came out last year that I for some reason didn't give the time of day until quite recently. Super awesome stuff. Oh, and one more. Why not? Cathodos from Serpent Column. My favorite album of 2020. Really fantastic, progressive, daring black metal on that thing, with some super nasty production to boot, which I actually really enjoy in the context of the release.
I actually checked it out on Colin's behalf, and he and it's like, okay, wow, this is super dissonant stuff, and I didn't make it through the 20-minute EP, to be honest. But
was something.
That is savage stuff there, and I can appreciate the level of complexity and masterful production, or what they've done. I can definitely acknowledge the quality, but it's not for me, I have to say.
Hey, that's very fair, you know, like, I
and
mean,
and with
extreme
Loathe,
metal.
I saw them 2 times in 2019. Second time was at the Summer Breeze Festival, big open air festival here in southern Germany, and I also got to interview them. Really cool guys and massive, energetic live show, and really unique style musically. I find, but I
Mhm.
didn't find a way to crack. I Let It In, and it took everything to their new album. I didn't connect with it somehow, but I also
Right.
do appreciate them a lot, and I know that they're doing something really unique in their own style and pushing boundaries there. So I definitely appreciate their presence in the scene, definitely.
For sure.
So yeah, I also have 3 little recommendations for today. Starting off with a new album that's gonna be out. Give me a second. It's gonna be out on February 19th from a new music project called Tvinna, Tvinna, and it's they describe their style as ritual progressive electronica dark pop, and it definitely got a lot of Nordic folk influences, as some of the members are also from the band Faun. And on one of the songs, one of the singles that is already out, they have guest vocals by Eivør. That's a great, interesting and dark affair there that I just listened to for the first time yesterday. Some really interesting stuff there. And second one would be a returning favorite of mine from 2019. I just listened again today to Soledad, a solo project's Catharsis. And so I want to put the song Rotting into the playlist because I think it's a cool addition. And one song from a release that came out in the second half of last year, and the Progspace has been involved a little bit in the release of this live EP from Ihlo, or Ihlo as we want to call them. The EP in Stasis, and the last song Replica is the new song, and it just keeps popping up in my head. So I'm going back to that quite a lot. Those would be my 3 entries to the playlist today. April, I'm gonna ask you to send me all your recommendations again in text message so I can add them to the playlist, and also
You got it.
and also yes, your kind of maybe personal best of from your own releases, so people can get an overview of your styles and of your releases, and also maybe a couple of your favorites from the new album. If there's
Absolutely.
if it's a song that's under 2 minutes, we can feature 3 or 4.
Perfect. Perfect.
Usually we have the problem that yeah, if we have like a couple of 7, 8, 9, 10-minute songs and a 20-minute epic, the playlist gets out of hand and way too long quickly.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'll send you a couple of my favorite shorter ones. There's definitely the 11-minute track, but I feel like people can discover that one for their own.
All right, cool. Thanks for the great talk. All the best with your with the release. I mean, that was one last question. Was it actually like? Did you anticipate like the advantage of dropping the album on January 1st? As you just said, that people just checked it out because it was somehow the first release of the year, and
You know, that actually did turn out to be a little bit of an advantage, and it had occurred to me that it might provide a bit of an advantage, but honestly, the reason I selected that release date was because that was the time by which I figured I could comfortably have CDs sent out.
Okay.
Just given, the amount of time it takes for everything. And I did a little crowdfunding for the CD pressing that I wanted to make sure I had time to roll out.
Yeah,
so
right.
it ended up being a mix of convenience and a hunch. And I'm super glad that it paid off.
Awesome. All right. Take care of over there. To our listeners, as always, thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and listen to great music.
The Progcast is a production of Stuus Media and is presented by the Progspace. It is produced by Randy M. Salo, Janine Stengel-Lewis, Blake Lewis, and Dario Albrecht. Our theme music is by This Is Not an Elephant, and Van Kirsch does our graphics. New episodes of the Progcast drop every Monday and Thursday, and don't miss our Friday Top 5 episode where we discuss our favorite new releases from that week. For more interviews and reviews in the written form, check out theprogspace.com.